Hello, this is Sondra Oster Baras bringing you a few words of Bible from the heart of Biblical Israel. This week's Torah portion is Matot, and it begins with the recitation of with a particular list of rules and the war against Midian that is addressed to all the tribes. Matot is another, it literally means staffs, but it's an addressing to all the tribes. I want to focus on an incident that happens at the very end of the Torah portion in chapter 32, which also refers to tribes. But it's a very interesting story. We have a situation where they have just completed these wars and they have succeeded in capturing already vast areas on the eastern part of the Jordan River, a part that is also part of the land of Israel. It is clearly part of the land that Israel will govern. However, there is a difference from the very beginning between what's referred to as the land of Canaan, which is the part west of the Jordan River, which is Israel as we know it today, and the part east of the Jordan River, which is Jordan today, which was always part of Israel but doesn't have the same level of holiness, of uniqueness, and we know that for a very simple fact because it is two things. Number one, it's only when Abraham actually crosses over the Jordan and ends up at the Oak of Moreh, west of the Jordan, that God says, I will give this land to you. And so that is an important place for him. But even more significantly, I think, Moses is told he is not able to enter the land of Israel. Okay, but he's already on the eastern part of the Jordan. So clearly there is a difference. The entrance to the land of Israel is that dramatic entrance under Joshua crossing the Jordan. So even though the parts to the east remain under Israelite authority, it is not the same thing as the area west of the Jordan River. And all of this is very significant in this story that we read in chapter 32. Where as a result of this conquest to the east of the Jordan River, these two tribes, Reuben and Gad, who have a lot of cattle, see that there's quite good grazing lands there. It's kind of interesting. I wonder what they're seeing, because when we look across the Jordan, we just see a lot of desert. So they must have had better grazing lands in those days than we see in Jordan today. But anyway, they want to stay there, okay? And Moses, of course, is very disturbed by this because he's concerned. He's concerned, is this going to be another sin of the spies? Now, don't forget, we're now in the next generation. So previous generation, 38 years earlier, comes back from Israel and says, no, we can't go. We can't cross over. And of course, what terrible consequences that produced when a whole generation was doomed to die in the desert. So Moses' initial response is, this is the same thing. Now you're saying you also don't want to go over. And then, of course, it is Reuben and Gad who assure Moses, no. We don't want to separate ourselves. We are very in favor of crossing the Jordan. And in fact, they offer themselves to be the pioneers, the front guard, who will go before the nation as they fight that fight of conquest in the land of Israel. And only after the entire land of Israel west of the Jordan is settled are they going to be willing, will they then go back east and build homes and settle their families properly and settle there. And at that point, Moses agrees, and that seems to be the end of the story. Okay, but the story actually continues, and I would say that this division, as much as these two tribes, and by the way, it towards the middle of this conversation, whereas initially only two tribes requested to come, somehow along the way, in the middle, half of the tribe of Manasseh joins. And that's a question like, where did they come from? Okay, and I think what happens with Manasseh and what that is trying to accomplish kind of reflects on the issue to begin with. The very fact that it's half a tribe means that one half is on one side and one half is the other. And they actually, if you look on a map, they span the Jordan in the same area. So it's almost like a continuous tribe of Manasseh where the Jordan is in the middle. Okay? And what that basically accomplishes then is a connection. The same tribe, the same family, half on one side and half on the other side in the same area, becomes a bond. And there are interpretations that say that Reuben and Gad were the ones who wanted to do this. It was Moses and perhaps God who suggested and put forward as part of the solution that Manasseh will be split and half of them will be there. Manasseh would be there then as a kind of guarantee that there wouldn't be a division, that by having this one tribe span both sides, that would create the mechanism for continuing the unity of the nation of Israel on both sides of the Jordan. But we know that this remains a point of contention. So in the book of Joshua, at the very beginning of chapter 1, one of the first things that Joshua is addressing is these 2.5 tribes. And he immediately says to them, as part of his initial discussion with the nation, okay, we're getting ready, we're going to go in chapter 1, he says to them, you remember what Moses commanded you, okay, that, leave your family and your livestock here and join with us and go before the nation to fight. And they then swear before Joshua that they will do exactly that they will become, they will be the fighting force, they will be there, they will do exactly what Moses said. So on the one hand, you could say, wow, they are so devoted and isn't it great? But on the other hand, you can say that Joshua himself suspected that there was a problem. Sometimes when there's a well-known understanding, for example, if God says to someone, very often God appears to someone and says, well, don't be afraid. Well, what does that tell you? He's afraid. And so here, when Joshua is saying, don't be divided, remember what your responsibility is, clearly he's sensing that there is a tension here, that there is, a question mark. And the fact that they have to repeat and confirm means if they didn't have to repeat and confirm, there wouldn't be a problem. But there is a problem. And we see that happening again at the end of Joshua, where suddenly there's they find out that the war is over, and these 2.5 tribes go back to the other side. And after they get there, all of a sudden, and this is in Joshua chapter 22, all of a sudden, it seems that they're building an altar on the eastern side of the Jordan, and this word comes back to Joshua, and he comes back to Phinehas. We talked about Phinehas actually last week, but here he comes again, and this becomes an issue. What is going on here? Because they have a tabernacle, and the tabernacle will come to rest at Shiloh. Are these people attempting to build a competing altar? And they send messengers. I mean, this is, again, on the verge of civil war, and they send messengers, and they say, what's going on? And thankfully, they assure the rest of the nation, these 2.5 tribes, that no, they have no interest in building a separate altar. In fact, it is just a monument, and that monument will serve to connect them to Shiloh, to kind of remind them that they are to face, west and look toward Shiloh, and it is Shiloh that will continue to unite them as a place of worship. So we see that even though what we see in our Torah portion seems to be solved, it remains a point of contention. And we also learn at the end of the book of 2 Kings, when Assyria comes down and exiles the nation, he does it actually in 2 different times, and the eastern part of the Jordan, these tribes of Gad, Reuben, and the half of the tribe of Manasseh are exiled way earlier than the rest. Okay, and that I believe is also mentioned in the book of Chronicles. So, clearly they have different fates. There is a sense of bond, but that may weaken over time. We don't hear that much about them later on, certainly in the book of Kings, except this one little fact that they are exiled first. So the tension remains. It is not perfect, but you see that what Moses is feeling here, and even though they come to a resolution that seems to be fine, I think Moses understood that it is still a seam, that it will create a seam that even seems to come together, but there will always be that seam that can create problems and tensions. Have a wonderful weekend. Shabbat Shalom.
I hope you enjoyed that video, and we'd like to be sure you're getting all of our video content. So just click on the subscribe button below, as well as on the notification bell. And that way you will have easy access to all our material. We look forward to staying in touch with you. God bless you and have a wonderful day.